Hi everybody, welcome back to the Overwatch Project at overwatchproject.com and on YouTube, possibly soon on BitChute. I might start uploading there. This video is part 3 in my series, and you'll be able to find it on my playlist. Also, How to Escape the Reincarnation Prison Matrix. It's about essentially concluding with the premise that we live in a reincarnation soul trap or recycling type thing where we're prevented from remembering who we are and getting free of this place easily. So knowledge is key. Knowledge is key. So we're going to explore 3 more factors tonight. Last video I did was love, fear, and guilt. Tonight is going to be amnesia, oneness, and third part, you can call it surrender or submission. Let's just say submission. So when you're looking at reality and investigating it like as if it was a crime scene, you think of it that way. You know, you're investigating it like you're your own private eye. You're like the cop, right? So you gotta interview the suspects. You have to examine the evidence. And when people give you information, when you get information from all these sources, the information is what's key. Okay, but remember, people give you information mixed with their own shit, right? With their own interpretation of it, which could be totally wrong. You could have witnesses about things, and what they're telling you is the information, which you have to separate from their idea about what it all means. And then you have to kind of collect a whole big batch of witnesses and evidence and all this other stuff, and that's when you start to really see that we exist in a really hostile reality that is really is a crime against us spirits who are imprisoned in human bodies over and over again and kept ignorant. And it really does seem like the majority of people out there have some type of Stockholm syndrome, almost like a virus or something that's in their thinking. It's like the way we process thought while in the human body. It does everything that it can do to sabotage thinking, actual thinking. So we have all these biases and stuff, and yeah, it's almost like people, they side with the so-called demiurge or so-called archons. You know, it's like they're on their side of our hostage keepers, and people really don't act in nice ways. So let's start off with amnesia, right? Let's get this ball rolling. So amnesia, oneness, and submission. Amnesia is people that study reincarnation phenomena should commonly understand that we are generally born with complete amnesia of previous lives. Not only that, but it's a two-way amnesia. Let me explain. So generally, when people die and are able to come back, for the most part, the brain is intact. It may be shut off for a time. Even in extreme circumstances like Pam Reynolds' case, her brain was no activity, but it's still intact. Only one case that I know of had a brain damage, really not explainable, that his recovery, Dr. Eben Alexander's recovery after his near-death experience, isn't even medically explainable because of it. The infection that was in his brain really devastated the brain. And he is the only case I'm aware of where he entered the NDE with amnesia of his human identity. In general, people that have NDEs, they temporarily enter clinical death. Then they leave their bodies, and then they know who they were as a human, but they look at the human shell that they occupied as something good riddance, right? And then we go through the whole, dealing with the entities or the God pretenders out there, and luring us into the tunnel or whatever to control us, to prevent us from thinking and knowing things. A lot of NDE cases have people having a vague memory coming back to them about their true spiritual identity or where they actually came from. Some place that some people refer to as a home they want to go back to. But then they're quickly interrupted and controlled and manipulated, and then eventually they end up back into their bodies. That's what happens in a typical near-death experience. It's a near-death experience because they end up going back in. But Evan Alexander's case is unique because he entered the NDE with amnesia, and I was troubled by that because it really is different than just about every other case. But when you read his book and you understand what happened to him, and you read cases like there's a out-of-body experiencer, I think his name is Graham Nichols, something like that. He mentioned once having an OBE where he witnessed, he didn't understand what he was witnessing at the time, but there had been a plane crash, and the passengers and crew didn't know that they were dead, so they were sort of like in a zombie shock, out-of-body state, not understanding that they've been dead. Matter of fact, Robert Monroe writes cases that he ran into people that didn't understand they were dead or didn't know what was happening to them. All this really is a crime against spirit beings. It really is. When you think about it, it's a heinous thing that is done to us here. But the Eben Alexander case shows that it may be a link. People enter an NDE, but they have full memories of their human identity when they enter. And this is how they get to use the life review against you and the bullshit karma shit. But the NDE, a case of Alexander, he enters the NDE with amnesia, and you got to wonder if the brain is necessary to maintain a connection to your human persona for a short time after death, and under normal conditions where people die and their brains are intact, you have full memory of your human self. So if, for example, if you have attained knowledge of all this shit and you die and your brain is intact at death, then there's a very good chance that you're going to remember all of the things that you learned about reality. And when you get approached by the plastic Jesus or the entities that want to be your spirit guides or the tunnel they're going to try to pull you into, you will remember, hey, wait a minute, this isn't really a good thing. I'm going to go into a void, or I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to think myself away from here. And so that you'll have time to recuperate your total self. And the amnesia thing, you got to wonder, how did they do it to the spirit mind? Because it's not physical. But somehow they do. And if you look at a lot of these cases, there's an NDE accounts channel, right? I'll link to everything you see here. I'll always put in the description section below my video. But this channel has tons of videos and documentaries, interviews. And that's one thing with NDEs. It's even more powerful when you listen to the person who had the experience, because it's kind of hard to deny that it was genuine. And then a lot of times there'll be doctors and other medical people involved in these, that you'll also hear from in these videos. And after a while, you have to be really dense not to get this is a genuine phenomena, especially when you look at other evidence and information points out there. So you have case after case where they're gonna, like this woman here, she seemingly had obtained knowledge of everything, but then she got pushed back into her body, and as she was going back down into her body, her memories, her knowledge that she gained about everything it was like going in reverse, and it was being taken away from her. She was protesting. She didn't want to. She didn't want to go back. In this documentary here, for some reason, the Pam Reynolds case is the first one in there. They really didn't do a good job going over all the details of the Pam Reynolds case in this documentary. From what I saw in the first 9 minutes, I'll watch the rest of it later. But I just want you to make you aware of that. There's so much more involved in her case. This woman here always fascinated me, her case. She ends up in some kind of voided area with these like disc-shaped beings who were tormenting her, telling her that she never really existed. And, so much for unconditional love, right? You do have a lot of these void cases. They are very interesting. Right, so Eben Alexander, so you got to wonder, if the brain is damaged, do you lose your human memories or human identity? Is that a danger? So if you die, say, in a plane crash, or you die of old age, does that make a huge difference? But you have so many factors involved, and you can't just go by what happened to Eben Alexander because he's only one case. We don't have enough information. It's just something that made me think. Because the amnesia is two ways. No doubt about it. People die, they remember their human selves usually, but they can't remember who they are. Their non-physical self. They don't get a complete picture of that. And everything here that works tends to be counterintuitive if it involves anything like this. So when you have people telling you, explaining to you things that I just don't understand where they're getting information from. So let's move on to oneness. This whole concept of your ego or your individuality being an illusion. This one bothers me to no end because I looked at all the data, and you have people throwing this out there that we're all just one consciousness that's been fractured, or we're just a part of one. And people say this like it's based on some information. It's just something that has crept into their minds. I don't know where they're getting it from. So, what is the exact data they're basing that conclusion on? It just seems to be an interpretation that's pulled out of thin air. So, I'm thinking about this whole oneness deal, right? Which also connects to the amnesia, because if you had all your memories, you would know the answer for sure, but we don't have it. So we get easily manipulated. We are constantly, victims of a crime and victims of like forced amnesia. There's 2 television shows that you should watch just to get a handle on the philosophy of trying to understand morally and stuff what really is going on here. Blind Spot and Dark Matter. These 2 shows both deal with amnesia. And it's fascinating that you see the person totally different when they, because of the amnesia, they're not who they used to be at all. And their whole personality, everything develops differently. And then you got to wonder, if somebody really did have their memories completely wiped except for procedural memories, then what happens to that person morally if they did something bad before, but they're not that person anymore, nor would they be capable of doing that evil deed that they did before again? Because if you could know that for sure, then what morally could you punish them for what they had done? And we go through these cycles of reincarnation and amnesia, except for certain people that have able to be born and they can maintain some of their memories for a short time. But you gotta wonder, So the whole oneness thing. Now, to me, everybody's looking at it backward. This guy on Reddit had a really good question. We're here on Earth to enjoy our uniqueness and identities. This is There is free will, and we are allowed to choose good, bad, and various other aspects of existence. Enter all these esoteric teachings from Union, Oneness, and Yoga, Union, and Christianity, and also New Age, and number of other religions. What if oneness is the loss of your uniqueness and identity, which gets swallowed up and eaten in some massive soul-eating soup that is merely portraying itself as awesome, amazing, unifying, and so on? That says it all, because that is exactly what I see. If you really think about it, okay? We're often asked to ignore what we're experiencing, to ignore what you're seeing. What is the problem with the Bible, the Christian Bible? I had to read it more than once, many times over, and in different translations. But it took me so long to understand, because I was reading it and my thoughts were polluted by all these apologists who were telling me what to think about what I read. Don't read what it says. Read what it says, and then understand what we tell you that it actually means. You get this everywhere in spirituality. And all of these religions and the New Age movement and so many other spiritual movements, they all have repackaged this oneness thing everywhere. It just shows up in different ways, right? You're Christians, you're going to be the sheep, you get the shepherd to follow you, you'll all be one with God. Buddhism, they practically strip away. Who knows what the original religion was like? Because there are no original documents. It's like 500-year delay between Buddhism's founding and what we have now. But I can't help but think that their whole unattachment thing has been corrupted, and their whole oneness and nirvana, and the whole you're just soulless, sort of like a been reduced down to this to be absorbed thing. And really, all these religions, they repackage this oneness deal, right? I found this article, Splinter of the Mind, is like an online book. It is totally free. I actually plan on going through this entire book and converting it to audio in a video series for you. But this is chapter 11, and the whole book is allowed to be reproduced. It has a copyright that anyone may copy or republish this article as long as you include credit to where it came from. So I may do a video series and cover everything that's in this book. This guy was a New Ager, and before that he may have been religious, or could that be a she? I'm not sure about that name. Bronte, is that a male name? Anyway, the book is pretty good, but individuality in league with oneness, not oneness alone. This whole oneness thing, I can't help but think, when you look at it, I think it's a trap. It's like the last ditch trap. If they can't recycle you back into the system, I think they've sprinkled this whole oneness deal. So if you don't want to go back, fine. We're just going to become one then. And that's when you voluntarily let your soul and spirit get consumed and eaten by this whole matrix system. And you actually give up your own immortal being willingly and get absorbed like the Borg. I don't see reality. I listen very carefully to how these near-death experiencers describe their experience. And, we could be looking at reality all backward. People want to think of a consciousness singularity that has basically been broken up, kind of like a big bang of consciousness, into little parts that all wants to go back to the big part. But how do we know that happened like that? We don't know. There's no data on it. Zero. But you listen to what people inform you with their information of their experience. For Forget about their interpretation. What are they actually saying that happened? They all seem to be individuals, experiencing something from an individual perspective, an individual self. A totally self-contained being that is interconnected. And when you want to use like a comparison or something, you think of the internet. Say you looked at the internet backward. I mean, the internet didn't come first. Computers came first. And then the internet happened because computers all started linking together, and eventually we created a giant, you could call it like a pseudo-consciousness, right? It's just a giant field of information out there, and it's flowing all over the place. And we're able to connect to one another right now. My computer to your device, whatever it is that you happen to be watching this video on, all because of the internet. But what if gurus came around and told you that it happened backward? What if they told you that the internet was one, and then it split up into little parts, and they became the computers that we have all over the place? It seems to me like that's what these gurus and so-called know-it-alls are trying to tell you. And everything here seems to be fucking backward. Okay? It just seems to be backward from what we're told is reversed from what it actually is. So, my advice, don't surrender your individuality, because this whole thing with ego death, they're telling you what it is. See, the thing with ego is it's your identifying your self-identification of yourself and how you perceive others and how you think they perceive you, and there's all kinds of philosophical and technical definitions for ego, but it's basically just who you think you are. But that's damaged because of amnesia. Who we think we are is based on a human avatar that had experiences, some of them may have been horrific here, and our education, our brainwashing, our indoctrination. But that's not us. We don't remember everything about us. When you're out of your body, it's time to forget about this oneness shit. You got to get yourself back together. Okay? And I really think that oneness is a trap. It is their last trap. You don't want to stay, but you can't leave ever. So why don't you just become one with us? Not because you really can't leave, but because that's what they're going to do to trick you. Why let the food stock leave when you can really eat them? If they really will stick around, trick them with this oneness thing. Submission, that's the last thing tonight. Submission. That's what it's really all about. Getting you to submit. And once you submit, then it's like a contract. You've submitted to this authority. Everything in life here is designed to get you to think about things need to be in a hierarchy. Things need to be controlled. Things need to be dominated. Things need to submit. It's really freaking evil. Really is. When you're not a human anymore, when you're just a conscious individual entity, non-physical, you don't need to eat. You don't need money. You don't need a house. You don't need anything that we are required to need here to at least be comfortable for as long as possible until we die. So, why would there be hierarchy that appears in the afterlife? This is all bullshit. When you finally die, when your body stops working and someday permanently, hopefully your brain will be intact, because I would hate to think that you die and then enter death with amnesia. That would suck. But as long as you can make such an impression on your spirit, which I think kind of sleeps, when we're awake, I think our spirit is sleeping, or it's just knocked out somehow. And then when we're sleeping, I think there's some kind of spirit activity goes there. That's why there might be like out of body stuff. We don't remember it. Our spirits, our non-physical selves are really messed up here. We spend all this time trying to figure out what's going on, but our thinking is all screwed up. And you have to really look at it like a crime or investigate it like a cop to really figure out what's going on. So let me see now. I started a new blog tab on my overwatchproject.com site, and I find myself, I find like a lot of crap online. Some of it is really good and it catches my attention. So these are just things that interest me. Some of them have nothing to do with anything. It just, I liked it, or I thought it was interesting, or I just wanted to share it with people. So I started like a blog page, and it's just where I'm going to dump links and stuff I find online that I think are interesting. Categories right now are like artificial intelligence, Catholic stuff, consciousness, hacking, religion, sci-fi, comics, gaming, singularity, soul traps, the real matrix, all that stuff. And just like I put here, just because I link to a website or article or another piece of information does not necessarily mean I agree 100% with the contents you see there. Remember, it's the totality of the information along with the investigation and careful analysis that will reveal a bright view of what our reality truly is. Just like a PI or a cop interviewing a suspect, you have to figure out which parts are real and which parts are faulty or faulty interpretation, or you're just plain being bullshitted to. The truth in its totality as you make a pile of information bigger. And then you have to change. You have to be willing to change your way you see things. When information comes to you and you vet it properly, and then you see that, picture of reality is going to be adjusted now. I did a video recently about artificial intelligence because as more and more information came out about it, I had to change what I believed about it. And not really what I believed. I had to change what I knew because information was valid and I couldn't discount it. It's really weird. Sometimes I get some of these really weird comments from people. 90% of the comments are amazing and they're helpful, and people will send me a title to some video I should watch, and I do, and they're fascinating, or a book I might want to look at, or a website or something. But once in a while, man, you get some of these comments and you're like, it's like, for some people it's just totally hopeless, right? So there's no reaching. Plus, you're not even sure everybody's a real person out there anyway. Some people could be just AI, Matrix, Agent Smiths, psychic vampires, or whatever you want to call them. So the link tab also, you might want to check that out because there is a lot of useful information there for research. And I plan on fixing up my book links page. I don't make no money from this stuff at Overwatch Project. This is all free. This way I don't feel any obligation to try to hold an audience. If people aren't interested in the information I'm sharing, they're not interested. The other thing is that people that want to argue with me, the few that do actually, they're not really arguing with me. They think they are, but they're not. They haven't done the research, and they're arguing with the information. And I'm just telling you, hey, look at the big picture. Look at all of these interviews. Look at all the information you have out there at your disposal to see what's going on. So that's it. Amnesia, oneness, bullshit, and submission. I plan on regaining my memories. I plan on not surrendering my individuality to anything. And I plan on zero submission. I don't necessarily want to dominate or attack any of these beings, but I won't put it out of question. From reading a lot of these books and listening to the experience of other out-of-body experiencers and stuff like that, the NDE people, they enter this out-of-body state out of shock, and they're scared. Some of them they're quickly overwhelmed by ecstasy and euphoria and this fake love. But they're not prepared, most of them. And then the out-of-body experiencers, that once they do it enough times, they do reveal an interesting clue that you can generate shit just by imagining it, right? So if something is bothering you out of body, just project lightning or fire all around you. All you gotta do is create it with your mind, and what it would do, how it would affect things. And I think you really don't know everything we're capable of doing. We're so hampered here. We don't know half, or not even a tenth of what we're capable of. So anyway, I'll see you guys next time. I'll link to these tabs below. Happy hunting, happy investigating. See you, take care, bye.